Hi, and welcome everyone. We're really excited to get started. We're just going to begin here in about another minute as our last attendees start trickling in.
Alessandro, you're going to be recording this, right?
Yeah, so the session is being recorded, and then TowerData will be sending everyone a recording after. So I think now is as good a time as any to get started. Welcome everyone to New Year, New Impressions, using data to conceptualize the customer experience and how to use those insights to build out effective automation. My name is Alessandra Geibent. I'm the marketing manager at GreenRope, and today we've got some incredible panelists. We've got an awesome panel. We've got Lars Helgeson from GreenRope, Ian Campbell from Mission Suite, and Phil Davis from TowerData. And without further ado, Phil, why don't you start us off and give us a little intro to you and TowerData.
Sure. Well, hey, good afternoon, and thanks for joining our webinar. I'm excited to participate with GreenRope and Mission Suite. I'm our Chief Business Officer. I've been with TowerData for about 5 years. I've been in the email marketing space for about 20 years now. And so I'm excited to share some tricks of the trade. TowerData is a data technology company. We make it incredibly easy for marketers to get the data they need in order to clean their emails, enhance their database, and personalize their campaigns. And we're proud partners with GreenRope.
Ian, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ian Campbell, and I appreciate you having me on the webinar here today. I am the CEO of Mission Suite. I actually come from a marketing background, marketing and business development background. I consulted with startup and early stage companies and nonprofits for a long time, and along the way met Lars Helgeson over here and developed a relationship there. And now I am a reseller of GreenRope. And so we white label it, resell it as Mission Suite, and we've been focusing on that solely for the past 3 years now. And so I am also excited to be a part of this and to share some insights from the past 18 years or so now. So
yeah, we're really excited to have you on this one. I know Phil and Lars have worked together many times on webinars, and we've all talked a lot. So we're really excited to have you kind of join in on the fun this time.
Absolutely, bring the new guy in, right?
Yeah, fresh meat. And Lars, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Lars Helgeson. I'm the founder and CEO of GreenRope. I've been doing email marketing for almost 20 years now, and started a company way back in the day called Cooler Email. And about 10 years ago, we launched GreenRope as a different approach to doing business with integrated CRM, marketing automation, email marketing, and everything else that everyone comes to associate with all the things that they usually use for sales, marketing, customer service, and operations. So we've been working with TowerData for a long time. And they've been, and like Phil was saying, they've been really easy to work with and really great. I mean, everyone there has provided us with a positive experience every single time. So we're really happy to be working together and sharing technology and being able to integrate their data into the GreenRope platform. And then of course working with Ian here it's been I want to say it's probably been 7 or 8 years now.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, 8 years. That's right.
Yeah. So it's been a while, but we've been working together for a long time, and Ian's insights have really done a lot to guide the way we've developed GreenRope as well. So really appreciate the time that we've been working together. So yeah, so I think we're going to start with a little bit of a background here about how we work together, like the actual technology and how the pieces kind of fit together. And so what you see here on the screen is the dashboard from GreenRope, and those of you who use GreenRope are used to seeing something like this. What we do is on the back end, we have connections to TowerData to bring data into the system. Now we do two things actually with TowerData. One is validation, and another one is doing that actual research. And as Alessandro scrolls down there, you'll see that with the research function, you can go in there and look at an individual contact, and we offer this as a free service. And when you hit that research contact button, it goes out to TowerData, and we do it through a secure encrypted connection where actually we don't share any personal information. It's a one-way encryption. And if they have a match to the data that we send, then they provide that back to us. And again, TowerData never actually sees any of the data that we send to them because it's one-way encrypted. Which is, I think, a great way to do business, because that way we ensure the privacy of all of the contacts that are within GreenRope's platform. Everything that you put in there it's not encryptable the other way, or not decryptable, I should say. So, and because it's free, there's really no harm in doing it. All it does is give you more data to help you better serve your customers and learn more about them. So that's how we do that. And we also can do it on a larger scale, where you can build this into your forms. And with you'll see there's the automatically research contact dropdown that you can set when you're doing the upon confirmation stage of a form. This is available both on our sign up forms and our support ticketing forms. So if someone comes into the database or fills out the form in a way that, and they're a new contact, or we have the opportunity to take an existing contact and append additional data from TowerData, we do that for you automatically and for free. So if you build your forms with GreenRope, you get access to all of the data that we can pull in from TowerData, which is really awesome. And in addition, automatically, we do validation. So what validation does is that just makes sure that when someone does fill out the form, that they're actually a legitimate contact. And so again, that's another free service that we offer to everyone that uses GreenRope for your forms. Now, when you're in GreenRope, you're using the platform, under contacts, you'll see that if you're the account owner or a power user, you have the ability to research contacts. So what that does is that accesses TowerData's ability to research a whole lot of contacts all at once. Now, there is a small fee for this, and mainly it's because there is a cost associated with getting access to this data. So when you're doing one at a time or using forms, then that's totally fine. But in order for us, and it's a very small cost. And so if you want to do the research for a large number of contacts, you can do that here. And so we do that on a group by group basis. So if you want to say research, call it 1,000 or 2,000 contacts, it might cost you 10 or 20 bucks. But the idea is that you can append data for all of your contacts en masse at once using this very convenient tool. So, and again, it's because we're able to do this secure encrypted connection to TowerData that never actually shares any of your unencrypted data with them. Then we can do that very quickly, that we're able to append all of this data and help you get more data into your CRM.
Yeah, it's a really useful feature. I know myself as, the marketer at GreenRope, I use it a lot to build out our customer profiles and to, be able to, personalize and segment, which I think we're going to get into right now. So why don't we start getting into some questions? And just so the audience knows, we will be sending out these slides along with the recording as well. And so you'll be able to, follow along, but then also review it as well at the end. So let's get started with our first question. We've got a lot to get through today. Lars, I'm going to start with you again. What is customer experience, and why is it more important today than ever before?
When we designed GreenRope, we looked at it not from the perspective of what can the software do, but what can we do to support the customer journey. And what that is looking at all those touch points that the customer has and what their experience is like, and being able to best serve that customer. And it's the market being what it is. We're in a competitive marketplace. It doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter what you do. There are other people who are trying to do it too. And you need to do it better. And the only way to do it better is to make sure that you have the right information at your fingertips. the better you can improve the customer experience, the happier somebody will be with you, and the more likely they're going to become a customer and tell other people about the positive experience they had with you.
Yeah, and I think we can all say, we've had some good and some bad customer experiences ourselves. Ian, Phil, do you have anything you want to add to that about, what your kind of definition of the customer experience is and why it is so important in this day and age?
Sure. You want me to jump in here? Ian, I'll go. So it's interesting because you think about customer journey and customer experience as two interchangeable pieces. But when we think about the customer journey, it's defined by a bunch of data points that we bring in to understand what's happened with the customer. When we think about the customer experience, you want to bring it to your customer's perspective. And so from a marketer, I like to think about it's that feeling that customer has at every touch point. It's a feeling that customer has based on how they interact with you, whether it's in a lead form, whether it's online, whether it's what happens in their store. And so it's in a lot of ways, in order to create that positive feeling, you've got to understand that customer journey, right? Make sense of all those data points that tells you how your customer's moving through and across. And then you got to put yourself in your customer's shoes and create that really excellent feeling. And we all have brands that do it really well. For me, REI is a brand that does a great job in all its different touch points, as an example. And we'll try to use some examples as we get through. So that's kind of my high level, is it's that feeling that you want that you have as a customer. And hopefully it's good, because when it's bad, you don't get that customer back. Ian?
Yeah, I think this is becoming more and more important as so much of life and experience moves into a digital realm too, right? Because I mean, we can all walk into a store and interact with, the cool guy in flip-flops at REI, but I mean, if we're sitting here if we're just sitting at our desks, looking through the store, I mean, how does that impact? How can we get the same kind of an experience, right? How can we mirror that and make the experience just as beneficial as online and digitally as we can in person, right? And I think that as we start to kind of talking more about customer experience, especially on the digital side of things, it's going to help us all make more money.
Yeah, for sure. And Ian, in your opinion, I mean, what does a really great customer experience look like?
It's that feeling that they know you, right? I mean, again, kind of going back to this idea of walking into a store, right? If I walk into a store in a suit and tie, someone's going to treat me a little bit differently than if I walk in shorts and flip-flops, right? Be that whatever that might be. If I walk into a suit and tie, if I walk in with a suit and tie, they're gonna look at me and kind of give me an assessment, and whether it's accurate or not, that's the presentation that I'm making and kind of indicating how I want to be treated. And the same thing goes for a pair of shorts and a pair of flip-flops, right? I mean, I'm kind of making my own presentation and kind of indicating to other people how I want to interact. And so customer experience just really kind of is really really focuses on how I want to be interacted with, and using the data that we can pull in order to kind of create those interactions.
Yeah, Phil?
Yeah, well, and in a lot of ways, when you look at a great customer experience, what a good marketer is doing there is they're using data to demystify what they understand about a user. And so, building on Ian's example, years ago, you'd walk into a store and they can ask you a few questions. They make some assumptions based on if I've walked into a Nordstrom's, they're going to direct me generally, and I'm in a shoe section, they're going to start directing me towards the men's shoes. They're not going to start showing me high heels right away. I need that same experience when I go online. Often I'll go online and then they don't use data. They're going to show me a woman's blouse, or maybe I bought a gift for my wife and that's the only time I made a purchase. And they're going to make the assumption that user just bought a gift for their wife, therefore they want only women's clothing. And they're not using the data to put context around it. So in a great experience, when you translate it from the analog to the digital world, involves contextualizing the behavior so that you can really make the right assumptions and give somebody a really nice, engaged, excellent impression.
So I think, and with that being said, and I think this next question, I want to kind of open up to all of you, and Lars, if you wanted to chime in first, talking about the customer experience, we also have to think about the customer journey, right? So why is it so important to understand that customer journey and how it relates to the customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, the customer journey is looking at the entire customer experience. So it's looking at how someone first learns about your brand, how they're going to come to a perception of your brand, whether it's positive or negative, or any of the personalities that your brand is trying to convey, how they're received, and then how they're going to interact with you, whether it's digitally through your website or social media, or if it's through phone calls or in-person meetings, whatever that is, following that customer through their entire experience all the way to the point to where they decide they want to buy something from you. And then after that point, engaging with them so that they become advocates of your brand. The more we understand the entire journey, the better we're able to serve our customers. And a big part of that is, like Ian and Phil were talking about before, personalizing what that journey looks like and how someone is treated. So more than, when we talk about digital, a lot of times people talk about personalization as like, Dear Joe, Dear Mary, whatever, in the emails that they receive. But what we want to do is go beyond that. We want to talk about how do we best serve our different market segments. So maybe, to kind of draw an analogy to what Ian brought up before about the guy in the suit versus the guy in the shorts and flip-flops, is if we can take information from TowerData, for example, and combine that with the identity that we've collected, maybe it's an email address, whatever, and we can look at someone's income, which is a common field that we can pull from TowerData. And we know that if someone is interacting with us on our website, maybe they fill out a form, maybe they're interested in more information, whatever that is, we've accumulated some identity information about a contact in our CRM. If we can append that data with TowerData and we now know what their income is like, we can treat them differently, and not in the sense that one is better than the other, but providing products and services that are better and more relevant for that person. And so it's about understanding how to interact with someone as they go through the whole journey with that data at your fingertips to be able to really personalize that experience.
Yeah.
Just to kind of build on that, with like Facebook and Google, right? I mean, we know that they have more information on us than any of us are really comfortable with, right? And they use that information to help to personalize our experience when we're on Facebook or when we're browsing Google, what have you, right? And and God knows how many other applications and whatnot, right? So, but you can really kind of personalize a lot of that stuff and serve up information and serve up messaging that's going to kind of appeal more directly to them. Like my wife is 8 years younger than I am, right? And so if I was born in 1980, she was born in 1988. If I start talking about something like Quantum Leap or Wings, right? Like, and talking about TV shows or start referencing like 80s music or what have you, I can't count the number of times that I've gotten blank looks from her, right? And so if you just used my information and my kind of history and interaction with some of this stuff as and also kind of like capitalizing on Phil's point, if you use my interaction with these things and start talking about things like right now I'm binge watching Quantum Leap because I get a kick out of it because it's classic 80s, right? You put that same messaging in front of Lindsay and it's an entirely different thing. So you might engage me with that, but you probably wouldn't engage her, but for the opportunity to say, hey babe, come here and take a look at this. This is ridiculous. And I'd say, well, that's my childhood, right? So it's so you can really if you can customize that messaging, and insofar as it pertains to email and whatnot, right? I mean, so and being able to say, okay, this person is about this old, that means that these references are the ones that they're going to get. It's going to be the difference between Backstreet Boys and New Kids on the Block, right?
Well, and Ian, it's not just customizing the text in the email; it's the images. It's using images that are appropriate to the person's age. Is really helps out. They actually done some studies around that. But when I think about the customer journey, also it's really important to understand that the customer journey is not single channeled; it's multi-channeled. And I think there's a fascinating trend. Some of the brands of my childhood have struggled to go from the storefront to online, a la Sears, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. When I look at some of the new hot brands, they're actually going from online only to opening stores. So there is a street in Chicago on Armitage that has 3 stores in a row that are always packed. Bonobos, Warby Parker, and now they just opened a Freebird. 3 stores that started online, and when you go in there, you leave with no product. It's a showroom and an extension of their digital experience, and they're doing a fantastic job. So you can create these experiences when you understand who the users across all channels. Now, what they do, you walk in the store, you pretty much log in using your ID, and it improves the whole channel experience. And they're really doing some interesting things around the customer journey and understanding the customer journey, because they've redefined the storefront and they've redefined, frankly, how they want to really help the customer, whether it's online or offline.
That's really neat. Too bad living where I do, unfortunately, we don't have, in a mountain town, we don't have too many of those experiences, but I think that is, I think that's incredible that you get to kind of make it more real for the human, for the person to be able to actually go in and, touch and look at things versus seeing it on a screen. It makes it much more tangible, and that's really cool. So on that, what data do we need in order to really understand the customer journey, and how can we use the tools at our fingertips to automate this customer journey? And Ian, why don't we start it off with you?
It's going to, honestly, that's going to depend on what kind of business you're in, right? So for me, I'm selling to sales managers, sales directors, and things, and people of that ilk, right? So I'm going to look for things like leadership capabilities and, things like that, things that probably aren't necessarily going to show themselves specifically, but I can look for other data. I can look for income levels. I can look for presence of children, right? Because for whatever reason, right now, every sales manager, sales VP of sales has 2 kids, right? So I can look for things like that and be pretty relatively accurate in what I'm finding along the way. And as I start to collect that information over the course of time, and this is kind of one of the keys that I always kind of look for is to collect this information in steps, right? Or at least reveal this information in steps, right? That this is stuff that we know about each other. Because if we can collect things like, do they have kids? Do they have, how much money are they making? What part of the country are they living in? Excuse me, what part of the state are they living in, right? Because if, there are very few VPs of sales that live in, Basalt, Colorado, right? But then again, if they're in Denver, then, it's a possibility that they could kind of land in this position. So it's really going to depend on your business, whereas mine might be specific to that. Anybody else's, like if you're in retail sales, obviously things like clothing size and height and weight and things like that become more important. So again, think about the things that you're asking people at each step along the way. If you actually have a customer journey written out, you should know what questions that you want to ask your customers at each step along the way. And, using like GreenRope Mission Suite, you can actually kind of build these little data clusters out and say, okay, so at this stage, this is the information that I need. And, kind of use that as a tool to guide the information that you're collecting along the way or revealing along the way.
Phil, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah. Well, I'll continue on that thought. One thing you want to make sure you do is you want to make sure you have the data you need to build those data clusters, right? And so I ran a digital agency a while ago, did a lot of emailing, all in the retail space. And when I think about the fields that were universally useful across the retail space, the same fields that we make available for you to use in your data clusters. So it's age, gender, location, marital status, presence of children, homeowner status, and income. In just about any retail environment, hospitality, banking, those fields are really useful for helping you to personalize, or at the very least, build your data clusters and slot people into meaningful segments. Those are like the 7 holy grail fields. When it comes to connection data or customer journey, in order to understand the customer journey, you need connection data. So you could link identities across channels. And the key there is your email address. Email is super powerful. So that hashed email can be tied to other things. So once you have a hashed email, we can tie it for you to a postal address if you need help. You can use that hashed email in advertising. You can use that hashed email to link to mobile IDs. You could also drop cookies. When you are able to build that connection data, you can then really understand the journey. But until you connect, you're going to miss pieces and components. So that's why one of the things we do is help you with identity matching.
So, I mean, and so great. Now we understand, the customer journey. We've got all that data, and now how can we actually use that information to create a better experience and really anticipate the needs of the customer, your leads, your customers, and all of that?
I think it comes down, well, you have to start first, because like Ian first said, that the answer of what data you're going to need and use really depends. It depends on the market, depends on what you're selling and how you want to sell it. And the best way for you to know how to do that is you have to take a step back from your business and think about how it actually works. What are you actually making people do? What does this customer journey look like? And so what we do, we have a free tool called journeyflow.com that you can use. All you need is a LinkedIn account to log in with. And we just use it as a way to help our customers and other people if they want model what that customer journey looks like. And it looks just like the journeys tool within GreenRope. But the idea is to take a step back and look at it strategically and think, now that my customer or my lead is at this stage, what do we want to do? What happens if they don't do this? What happens if they do this? Do we want to send them an email? And then if they don't click on the link, do we want to send them another email? Do we want to wait for them to fill out a form? Do we want to schedule a phone call with somebody? And the reality is that email is still, there's some people who will go around and say that email is dying or dead, and it's not. Everyone in B2B uses email. Everyone that works in business has an email address. And most social media accounts have an email address associated with them, which is how we're able to connect a lot of the dots. But what we want to do is look at what that customer journey looks like and look at where we're making decisions. How are we going to treat somebody differently? Does it really matter if we know their income, if we're going to treat people the same regardless of how much money they make? Does it really matter if we know if they have children, if we're never going to use that data? We may want to append that data and have it in the system, but if we're not really going to use it, we don't really need to focus that much on it. And I think that's where as marketers, we don't want to say, let's get and try to use everything, because we only have a finite amount of resources and time. And all of this requires a little bit of testing to make sure it actually works, and design and everything else. And so the better we understand our customer journey up front, the more we can set up those touch points to either gather or collect the data or use it. And then we're able to really focus on how do we drive people down what we want the customer journey to be, which ultimately is getting them to give us, to become customers. And so, and eventually become advocates. So the better we understand that process and how we're going to use the data, the more effective we're going to be as a business as a whole.
That's a good point. And to build on that, that kind of data is also going to inform how we communicate and how we interact with these prospective clients, right? So, for example, people, you're right. People say the email is dead. In B2B, it's not. But even in B2C, if we're looking at, on the consumer side of things, when we're looking at people that are upwards, like I want to say it's 38 to 40 and above, email is still their preferred method of communication for the most part, right? And of course, we're generalizing, but when you talk to those people, email is still their kind of the first and foremost, right? I don't want a text message here. I want an email that I can kind of sit in my inbox until I deal with it, right? But that said, somebody who's 25, 26 wants a text message instead, right? Or wants wants something different. So it's going to help us there's a lot of studies that indicate the best methods of communication for men versus women, for different age groups, different things like that. And so we can use a lot of this information to, as we're building out these journeys that Lars was talking about, make determinations of who gets what method of communication. So, okay, so they're, under 35, send them a text message, assuming we have permission. If they're, if they're making more than this much money, per year, if their household income is more than whatever, then it's a phone call. That's probably going to be the preferred method, because they probably don't tend to their email anyway. Whatever that case might be, obviously you're going to know your customers and clients better than anybody. So those are the types of determinations that we have to make. But I mean, you can look at the research and kind of find that information and use that to create some pretty powerful messaging on how people want, in the way that they want to hear it.
Yeah, no, it is really important, because, like, for example, and I just thought about, that email and the phone, versus the phone call versus, I mean, my grandmother doesn't have it. Yeah, we don't know the password to get into her computer, and she's had it for, so this is what we're working with. She's not on email. She still has a flip phone that basically she just uses, just for an emergency. I can't even, I mean, I forgot, how you even type a text message on those things. It's crazy, but she absolutely insists that, she wants the phone call, she wants the print piece. And that's very, the newspaper, that's very important to her, where, it's kind of, for me, being 30, that is a more archaic. I don't really necessarily want to talk to someone, get sales calls and talk to someone necessarily. I love having it, like you said, on an email where I can, see it, deal with it when I need to, or a text message saying, oh, we're, giving away free tater tots at the, local pub down the street. Great. Those are all, but it's very, it's interesting, and it's true. You just have to use all that data to really connect with the consumer in the right way.
Right. Well, in a lot of ways, Sandra, is the medium you use might be, you might not say I'm only using email for this age group and phones for this age and this. It might have to do with the type of message. So yeah. Email is a fantastic way for sending receipts. It's a preferred way for getting receipts. It's a great way for getting confirmations that have a fair amount of information. If you buy a ticket, you're going to get an email with your ticket. You might get a text also, but a lot of times you also get an email. It is used across all generations. And so the key isn't so much what platform you're using, it's the message and how you place the message in order to make that great impression. I see our next question is about first impressions, and really
that leads us right into it.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. It's about using that data to make a fantastic first impression, whether it's an email, a push notification, a text message, on a retargeted ad, because all at the center that hashed email is connecting to everything, but it's getting that data so that you can make a fantastic first impression, right? And so, again, if I buy a gift and they make the assumption that the next thing I want is something that's like that gift, because they didn't pay attention to who I am and how I behave and what I do and what I like, it might feel very relevant at the next experience. So it's real important to get the data you need, tied with the behavior. And if personalization feels way too ambitious for you, then cluster the data into different segments and treat each segment like a different group. Facebook's doing that with their lookalike modeling. Bring that same thing back to your email. It's quick, it's easy, and it's super effective. So great first impression is really about using data better to match the potential interests and likes and needs of your customer.
And I loved your earlier example of imagery as well, right? Because talk about first impressions. Our eyes aren't meant to read computer screens, right? God knows they're not meant to read these things. So as we kind of go through these things, imagery is everything, right? I mean, pictures have said 1,000 words for a lot longer than we've been doing any of this stuff. So using those images and using the data to kind of customize those images to specific subsets, and using things like those dynamic rules that we can utilize this stuff to do. I mean, those images are gonna make a massive first impression, but you've got to have the data to inform it, right?
So a great example, super simple. I was working with a very, and I'm not going to name the brand because the story at the beginning wasn't so good. So working with a very, very large women's brand, and they sell clothing everywhere from kind of business casual business to kind of casual, right? And they sent out an email every day, and I walked in and they said to me, you know, women over 35 don't respond to emails online. They don't shop online and respond to our emails. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense because all the research says otherwise. It says, let me look at your program. Tell me what you do. Well, they send the exact same email to everyone in their database every day. One day it's 30% off. One day it's 35% off. One day it's 40% off. One day it's 25% off. That's about all they do to change it up. But the images in their ads were young models, pretty much size 0 young models who were between the ages probably of like 19 and 22. So came in there and they're sending them to their whole database, and you know, women are are looking at an image and saying, "Oh, this isn't for me." Well, we appended age to their database, and they went into their broader set of models and put in age-appropriate models, and conversions went up significantly at the various ages because suddenly someone could look at it and say, "Oh, they are talking to me. Look at that picture. That woman's around my age." And all it did was take one data field and one very simple change, because they didn't create like one age per age. They basically created like 4 segments. And so it was basically 4 different emails, and it was a huge success. It shouldn't surprise any of them.
Yeah, that's a really awesome example, and that kind of feeds into the question that we're looking at now is how can you use data to make that first impression? And Lars, Ian, do you have other examples of how you can really actually use that data in a real world situation to make that first impression?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few tools that we have built into GreenRope that make this pretty easy. One is the merge rule, and you can use this when you're building emails or when you're doing landing pages, because you can customize landing pages for individuals as well. And what the merge tool will do is it will take a contact's data and automatically merge it into the content that you're building, whether it's an email or that landing page. So if we're sending it to you, Alessandra, then that would say, more than just dear Alessandra. We can look at the data that we might have accumulated from TowerData and say, now that we know your gender and your age, we can set up rules. And so you don't have to build within GreenRope. You don't have to build tons of different individual email templates. You can build one template and use that message to go in and personalize the content that they receive based on what you know about them. And so you can say, to build your rule, you can say, if the recipient is male, put this content here. If the recipient is female, put the content here. If the person is over 25, or if this person is over 30 or whatever, falls in this demographic, you can do that. And so by personalizing the content, it makes it much more relevant to the person who's receiving it. On top of that, we also have a lead scoring engine. And the lead scoring engine is built into there's a demographic component and an activity component. So the activity component happens automatically, right? So when someone opens an email, they click on a link, they go to a web page, whatever, they're accumulating points. On the other side of that, we have demographic lead scoring. And so we can look at giving people more points for having certain demographic qualities. So if we know that, generally speaking, we're targeting a certain age group, or we're targeting homeowners, or we're targeting people with a certain amount of income, and we can give them greater demographic lead scoring points inside of our CRM, that will associate a higher value based on what we know about that person. And then from that, with the lead scoring, we can set up automation around that. And so we can say, if someone comes to this website, they fill out the form, and we know that they make a minimum of, say, $100,000 a year, then we're going to send them this particular message. And if we know that they're male, we're going to use one set of imagery. And if we know that they're female, we're going to use a different set of imagery. And so we can automate that entire process. And that's what we want to use our CRM for. We want to use software to automate the way someone goes through this customer journey. And the better we understand the customer journey, and the more things we connect, of course, with a single unified platform like GreenRope, where this is all relatively easy, it really engages that person more. They feel like this business actually cares enough about them to send them more relevant information. With automation, of course, it becomes more timely, and that really is a big component into getting people to respond when you send them messages.
And another like example that comes to mind, in something we do, with some of our own marketing is we use sort of the title as well, or what their, job function is. So if they're in sales or marketing, we can actually personalize we can build one newsletter, but we can insert those, dynamic placeholders that will let us automatically put, marketing focused content for the marketer and sales focused content for the sales manager, for example. And that's all done. I mean, of course you have to build out that content, but once you put that, placeholder in, you're good to go. You're good to go and test out that content, and it automatically populates the content in that single newsletter to be much more relevant to the person receiving it. And I think, that's a basic example, but I think, something that, businesses and everyone, listening today, that's, a really easy way to just start with, personalizing content and saving time and energy and resources at the same time. Because again, you only have to build that one versus having to build out, 4 different emails.
Mm-hmm. So. I do a lot of kind of old school, just, networking, selling kind of stuff, right? And I do business between here in Denver. I'm in San Diego a lot. I have family in Rochester, New York still, so I'm back there a lot. I've got family in DC, so I bounce around to a lot of different places. And so what I like to do, I use a lot of data that I collect personally, and I've got like a ton of custom fields that I utilize for this. But using this kind of information, like, okay, where did I meet this person, right? Did I meet him in San Diego? Did I meet him in Denver? Did I meet him somewhere else? Because then I can drop all that information, and using those dynamic fields, which I love, and I'm a huge proponent of for my clients that are out there selling and kind of doing this stuff. Because all it takes is just when you're creating a new contact, just selecting a couple drop downs, and then the right message goes out to the right person. Hey, we met in San Diego at the University Club. I think I mentioned I split time between here and Denver. Let's jump on a call and then schedule breakfast next time I'm in town. Whereas if I meet a person here in Denver where I live, where I live full time, then it's, hey, listen, I'm here. Let's have breakfast, right? And so, grabbing a lot of this stuff that you have and that you can pull in automatically. Of course, it's huge, but I think that there's a lot of value to kind of utilizing a lot of the custom fields that we can create too, to capitalize on all that stuff. And then when you can pull it all together, there's a lot more power to it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great example of kind of bringing that, merging the online and the offline as well. So I think that's a really good example. And we've only got about 15 minutes left. So, we've got some really great questions. And so I want to move on to the next question. And I think this is a really huge one today, is how can you integrate sales, marketing, and customer service to really improve the customer journey? And I think that is a huge thing that we're seeing, companies do. And so, Lars, why don't you start us off on that? Because I know that's something that you're, obviously one of the reasons that GreenRope exists is to, integrate all of those and actually create a cohesive, complete, amazing customer experience.
Yeah, it really is about pulling that data together. The more we understand the relationship, and the relationship is built from sales, it's built from marketing, it's built from customer service, it's built from someone working with your client onboarding team, whatever that is, all of those components are building the relationship, and you need to have one central place to organize that information. If you have part of the relationship stored in some other piece of software, it makes it very, very difficult to use that software or to use that data. And so what we wanted to do when we built GreenRope was pull all of those components together into a single platform. And that's really that integration is really the secret sauce. It's the power of a system like GreenRope, so that you don't have to go out and do the traditional CRM role where you have a CRM and then you use a different piece of software for the marketing. You might use a different piece of software for looking at social media, different thing for using tracking videos, different thing for events, different things for managing internal projects, and you know, and the list goes on and on. The more software you have, the more complicated it is, and the harder it is for the people in your company to actually use that data. When that happens, you get empires built within your company, and clicks that result as people use data for leverage over each other. I remember this when I was in the military, back when I was in my early 20s, and people would use their security clearances and the information that they had access to as leverage over other people. And the same thing translates into the corporate world, where people say, well, I'm the only one who knows how to use this thing. And so you can't fire me, because if you do, then you won't be able to use any of this data anymore, which is a terrible. Yeah. And then on the other side of that, you have the people who who feel like, because they have access to certain data, that makes them more or less powerful as part of like this team approach, and it doesn't create a team environment. What we want to do is have the software that's available to create that culture where everyone feels like they're contributing to each other's success. And that's really the core behind why we built GreenRope the way we did as one platform, because it's a cultural reflection of how you run your business. If you use one piece of software to run your business, you're using the one piece of software to bring people together, and you take out that complexity, you take out the need for importing data in and out, and it just makes everything run better. And that's really what we want to create.
Ian, Phil, do you want to chime in on?
Yeah. So, I think I think it's kind of a given that these three kind of functions don't exist without the others, right? I mean, at the end of the day, marketing has to help to generate sales, and sales has to help to kind of serve the customer experience, and then, kind of bring it back full circle to have the service aspect helping with marketing. I mean, the three exist in a circle, and it's a strong bubble. And to Lars's point, the fact that it's one system means that you don't have to worry if somebody changed the password over here and forgot to update it over there, right? And so there's a lot of benefit to that. But my favorite thing, story kind of goes to this one client that I was working with. They were selling into hospitals, and they needed to be talking to like hospital administrators or something like that, right? So the sales team was out there making phone calls and dropping in data, dropping in information, and then their marketing team was out there promoting content. And so somebody from a hospital stumbled upon this content, downloaded it, filled out the form, which was, it was they didn't ask for title. And so they were able to download the form pretty easily, and then all of a sudden it started getting shared around like crazy, right? And so the marketing team was stoked, and the sales team started calling on these people, and they said, well, these leads aren't leads, right? These are terrible. And as it turned out, the janitor from the first hospital was the one that came across this info and downloaded it, and then sent it around to all of his janitor buddies. And it was a low-level guy, and these were low-level guys that he was sharing it with. And so marketing was like, we're making the phones ring here. Look at this. This is fantastic. Look how many leads we're getting. But, just because they didn't have the rest of the information or the right information, I mean, a simple kind of income aspect would have shown that, the janitor is making a lot less than the hospital administrator is, right? So, I mean, or just asking for title or whatever the case might be. I mean, so if you can, but keeping these things together makes marketing and sales work well together. And this is a story as old as time. I mean, marketing generates leads, what they consider leads, whether they are or not, and then sales says, well, no, these leads can't work, and you end up with this kind of back and forth. So using a system that's integrated like this and being able to pull all the data together into one system, add data to it, obviously, and actually kind of leverage it appropriately, kind of helps to prevent the sales and marketing leaders from, feeling like they're parents dealing with bickering school children and like they're, trying to lead an actual team together.
Yeah, but you can't talk too badly about janitors. That was my summer job when I was in college. So,
I mean, no, hey, nothing against janitors.
No, I think that's a good example. Yeah, and it's so powerful to have. I mean, because I know that myself, as marketing, I take information from customer service. So we look at, what are those inquiries? What are the most, frequently asked questions? And we can develop content that then speaks to those, or videos that answer those questions. And so that information is very valuable. And then sales information obviously is incredibly valuable, because obviously the leads that, marketing generates, we want them to be great leads for our sales, but we don't know that if we don't have open communication, between sales and marketing, and and have that data that we've got access to, in order to make those decisions, and for better targeting for our ads, and and how we write content and how we develop content, and are we speaking at a higher level voice? Do we need to make things more simple? So all that really matters. And even like clicks on emails and all that stuff. So I think having the integration is super powerful, and I definitely see, the rest of the world, and I know that, the world's been so, stuck on some of these, best in class platforms, but they're really so, singular. They don't it takes a lot of work to bring in all that data. And, with GreenRope, Mission Suite, and TowerData, that's all, it's all done for you right then and there, and that's the beautiful thing about it. And I think that, every business can benefit from services like, all of yours. So I think that's amazing. I am going to skip the next question, just because I want to get to some questions. I think we all know, what a great first impression is, and we've all had experience with, on both sides of the table there. But one thing I want to end with before we, end this webinar and get into some questions are, what are 3 practical tips and takeaways that viewers can do today to improve their customer experience? And I do want to say as well that we do have all of our panelists takeaways in this slide deck as well, so you will be receiving that. So maybe if you guys just want to give one, your biggest takeaway or biggest advice for our audience on how they can use data and improve their own customer experiences. And then Phil, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I'm going to jump to my less obvious one then, which is, I like to look for that low-hanging fruit opportunity. And when you look at the low-hanging fruit, we've worked so hard to make our campaigns better, but we weren't always doing it as well as we're doing it today as a group, right? So, over the years, we've lost some of our audience. They became unengaged because we weren't as buttoned up as we are today, right? So what I'm suggesting is that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in your unengaged audience. And I would recommend that you use email validation and opener data that we have in order to identify which emails in your unengaged population are currently engaging in other places, and recognizing that they're clean, active, and they're engaging. You just lost them because you weren't buttoned up. And now you could take your best practices that you've learned and apply them to this subset of your unengaged audience. I think that's a great tip. Some of our clients are using it and seeing some tremendous lift.
Yeah, I think that's
what you're talking about. So nothing but brilliance has fallen from these lips in years. So.
Well, the technology's gotten better. So the brilliance plus technology has allowed you to do much better things.
Ian, what about you? What's your top takeaway?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go back to something that I said before and try to mimic the experience that you would want somebody to have if they were sitting in front of you as best as you can. That's because when it comes down to it, we're all social creatures. We are all, we're all seeking that really kind of personal interaction. So so we've all got stages of our process, and so whatever those might be, and however many of them there might be, but try to mimic that experience as closely as possible, to make it feel like, and to make it mimic a situation in which they might be sitting across the table from you.
Awesome. And Lars, what's your final takeaway?
I think the biggest thing, and we've probably heard this before if we're in senior management or we own a business, the biggest thing is understanding the distinction between working in your business and working on your business. It's very tempting for us to get sucked into the day-to-day operations of our business and think that I have to do this right now, I have this deadline I have to meet, and to focus every day working in your business. But what we want to do is take a step back and look at how do we work on our business. And to do that, we have to think about what our business really is about. Who are we serving and how do we want to serve them? And really taking that strategic view of how do we best want to serve our customers. It's something that as business owners and senior management, oftentimes we don't actually do that. We kind of talk about it, but don't actually sit down and write down or use a tool like Journey Flow or whatever, some sort of a process map to look at, well, how does our business actually work? And then once we have some of that perspective, then we think about, well, where are these points where we could better serve our customer? And where are some of these points where we could use maybe automation to send out content or some way to help streamline the way the sales process works? And we really don't want to take a stab at that. We don't want to just look at one particular part of the business process and say, oh, here's something, we could send an email right at this particular point, because that may not be the right method or the right message at that time. And so we really want to take that time to step back. And whether it's a couple hours that you and maybe a few team members get together at the senior level of your business, or you take a day and do a retreat or whatever that is, whatever that looks like, take the time to really evaluate the way you do business. And if you're in the process of trying to evaluate what software you're going to use, whether it's a CRM or marketing or whatever, do that homework first so that you can understand what your requirements are, understand what the requirements are from the customer's perspective, so that you can best meet their needs, because that's how we provide the best customer experience.
Yeah, and and Lars, it's interesting. So one of mine, which builds on that, is to audit your brand experience on a regular basis, but don't just audit it with senior management. Audit it, when you're auditing it, talk to the front line, the people who are talking to your customers, who are the closest to your customers, because they've got some brilliant suggestions that they'd like you to hear. And that's been some of our best nuggets. But really, that just auditing that brand experience, we're actually implementing a chatbot right now. So it's supposed to focus us to really think through kind of like that potential experience. And it's just going through that decision tree that a customer might go through, and thinking about every touch point is really valuable and insightful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And of course, everyone who's listening in, they do have more key takeaways as well, and we will be sending you the deck, so you'll get all of those. Now we'd like to open it up to any questions, so you can go ahead and put your questions in the chat or in the questions box, and we will be happy to answer any. So yeah, go ahead, answer questions. And I do want to let everyone know as well that we do have 3 handouts that you can access from your GoToWebinar panel. So we've got one from each of us. So one from GreenRope, one from TowerData, and one from Mission Suite. So you'll definitely want to download those as well. Those are kind of handy ebooks and guides, worksheets that you can use to help, help get started on your own journey towards, becoming a more data-driven organization. And we don't have any questions just yet, but again, I'm just kind of sliding through here. And then so you can see that we do have all some great tips here that you'll be able to access again. And then, of course, with this, you'll see our contact information. If you have questions for GreenRope, TowerData, or Mission Suite, feel free to reach out to any of us. with questions, or if you're interested in learning more about our companies, what we do, our services, we're always, of course, happy to answer any questions and help. All right, so no questions, and we are at 2. I can't believe no one has any questions. Maybe we just over.
Alessandro, it's 4. We might have overshot the runway just by a few minutes anyway.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, 2 here for.
Yeah, 2 by you.
Oh yeah, you guys are in. Yeah, we're all in different.
Yeah, right.
Oh God. Okay. It's almost the weekend. Here we go. So yeah, no questions. But if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You know, everyone at all of our companies are, you know, very open access. You can, you know, email us, submit a ticket, chat, all of that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can reach out to us and get more information. Again, this session is recorded, so you will be receiving the recording along with slides. Please do take a look at the handouts. And thank you, everyone, for attending. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Ian, Phil, Lars. Every time I speak to you, I feel like I learn a whole lot more, and I get really inspired to go back and, you know, find out what I can do more to make the experience better, our content better, our newsletters better, everything for our own customers. So I hope everyone else was as inspired as I was. And yeah, if you guys just want to kind of give your little sign off, then we'll be head on our way.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for
Thanks,
your.
everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend.
Yep. Cheers.
Bye, guys.